Thank you.
Welcome your host, Caddy Frink, as she leads discussions about substance use disorder and the journey to recovery. You're listening to Redefining Recovery, a recovery revolution.
Welcome to all that are listening. It is Redefining Recovery, a recovery revolution here on AM 950, the progressive radio station. And I am so happy to be back in the seat again. My other team of humans took care of last week, and I am just so incredibly proud of them and grateful for Bobby, who is here with Frogtown Recovery Cafe. And across the mic from me is Alicia Doty, that I can't hear. So maybe that'll help. Alicia Doty, how are you today?
I am good. I woke up and it's a beautiful day with no snow outside.
Yes, it's a beautiful day. So I forgot to ask the question, what's right with you today?
What's right with me today is I have had an amazing last week and a half, and I'm blessed to not be incarcerated.
And that will be the theme of our conversation, as well as many other things around that. But yes, we both have that. So
what's right with you today, Caddy?
So what's right with me today? I woke up. Awesome. We'll start there. And I was at an event last night with Minnesota Recovery, which is an organization in town that it helps the East African and all communities struggling with substance use disorder. So I got to see a lot of good faces last night and kind of get rejuvenated. So it was really, really cool to be around more of the recovery community. And so I'm grateful that we have such a strong community. Isn't it marvelous?
It is absolutely marvelous.
It is. Thus, I forget. Let me send special thanks to our generous funders that we have, including the Patrick and Amy Butler Foundation, Otto Brummer Trust, the Sauer Family Foundation, the Hardenborough Foundation, alongside many other corporate foundations and individuals, and any of you out there. We're always happy to continue sustaining our recovery journey at Minnesota Recovery Connectiomn, and every penny, dollar, or more than that is always helpful. Right, Alicia?
It is.
Because we do good work.
Mm-hmm.
We do amazing work. So Alicia alluded to being in the incarceration community. And so last week we were at Shakopee prison, correct?
Correct.
And we were training individuals in that community. We call
22
exactly. Individuals. Yes, 22 incredible humans. And we call it a community because many times when we're talking about the culture that we live in and the cultures that we have around us, when you're in that environment, in that community, it's a culture within the greater communities that we have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think every time we do this, I learn more about humanity and how humans tick, and maybe what brought them to that scenario. They're in and incarcerated in a prison, and we have these perceived ideas, right, Alicia?
Yes, perceived ideas. Some call them judgments, but
yeah. And I want to just sort of say, let's be careful, because people are in that community that are there justifiably because they have been taken through the justice system and they have been ruled as this is what their sentence is. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of stuff behind the curtain, and that's what comes to my mind when I think about that. And I just want everybody to be careful that not everything looks the way it does, like it does on TV, right, Alicia?
Or on a piece of paper.
On a piece of paper, or on a radio broadcast, or on some sort of blog that you're reading that somebody did something and they are a truly bad human. I think what I've taken away is that sometimes people do things in the moment that are very bad. No question, right? Yeah. And there could be some circumstances that are very deeply embedded as to why that situation happened. And I think one of the key components to that is that when substance use disorder, when addiction comes in, there's something else that takes over logic. Would you agree?
I would agree. And I also like the saying that you say that I kind of took over is not what's wrong with you, but what's happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of puts, in essence, maybe some past traumas or things like that have happened to an individual that maybe have led to a circumstance where they have not necessarily been, how do I put that, more or less likely to go to if they hadn't had these past traumas.
Right. Yeah. So we always have to look at somebody's past before we judge their certain situation. I think it's really important. What I forgot to do, and I'm silly Caddy here because I'm just back in the saddle again. Who are you, Alicia? What do you do? And tell me more about you so that this listening audience who's like, who's this lovely voice on the other side? So why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
My name's Alicia, and I'm a woman in long-term recovery. And what that means to me is I haven't used substances in almost 4 years.
Whoop, whoop.
Yep. I haven't been incarcerated in just over 7. I now have custody of my oldest son back. I now have unsupervised visits with my youngest son, and I can live a life of purpose, hope, and inspiration to others that are a part of this journey.
And what are you for Minnesota Recovery Connection?
I am a certified peer recovery specialist, forensic endorsed, which means I have a training in navigating the criminal justice system. I also go into the county jails and provide programming, do transitions fairs, and help Caddy train all these wonderful incarcerated people that have a journey to live outside of incarceration as well.
So you mentioned transitions fairs. Nobody out there has probably any idea, but about 7 people listening that might know what a transitions fair. So you were where doing what yesterday?
I was in Willow River,
which is a
incarcerated persons boot camp. That takes, and it's a shorter stay for them. They're very structured, very like orientated on like yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes,
following the
rules big time, and it helps them get a shorter stay on their sentence. And so they go there, and I was invited there to provide resources and connection and community to them for when they get out, to help them prepare to come into our community again.
So I'm going to add a little bit of piece on that. So an individual, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So an individual is sentenced to a particular time. And these are individuals that do they get chosen to do boot camp, or do they
have to apply? They have to apply for, and then there's certain stipulations that they can't have like so many disciplinary actions on their record. They can't have like a lifetime sentence or things like that. They have to have an end date. Exactly.
Okay. So they have to have, so it's an individual who's been incarcerated, who is shown, applies for this, shows good intentions, and has a clean inside record, I'm going to call it.
Yes.
And then they get this opportunity provided to them, and then they have to go through this. And I've seen individuals, and I've met individuals who've gone through this, and they said it's intense, but it's also very helpful. So it just really just kind of drives home doing all the right things. I hate to say that, but would that be accurate?
That's accurate.
Yeah, because then they're just sort of like maybe relearning on how to navigate when we come out to the greater community. It's like, okay, there are rules, there are things we have to follow, we have to do. Now, there's always wiggle room on things, but they're not going to perpetrate another crime for all intents purposes, but just sort of like getting super structured, and then coming out to the community where there's a whole lot of structure, whether it be visible or invisible. And I think that's really the important part.
Yeah. And they also have when I was at the transitions fair, they have, coming out of boot camp, they have so many hours of volunteer to do. So a lot of them signed up for Minnesota Recovery Connection to get information about volunteering when they're on their ISR or supervised release.
Okay, cool. Gosh, we just talked all inside baseball there. Everybody's scratching their head. I love it. So when we come back from break, I'm going to sort of pull that apart a little bit so that we can help people understand why it is, who it is that we help in this community. Those who are incarcerated have an opportunity to get out, and we want to give them all the tools that we possibly can at Minnesota Recovery Connection. So thank you for listening to Redefining Recovery, a recovery revolution. Catch you in a couple of seconds. Thank you.
We've all seen the man at the liquor store.
Well, hello out there in Radio Land. My name is Caddy Frink. I'm the host. Alongside me is Alicia Doty from Minnesota Recovery Connection on Redefining Recovery, a recovery revolution. Thank you for listening. We're having sort of an intense conversation about one of the communities that we serve that is actually part of all of our communities, right, Alicia?
Yes, it is.
I mean, there's a lot of people who have done something like myself, had a couple of DWIs. I went to the workhouse. I had a leg monitor. I had no driver's license for a year. So I've been impacted by the justice system. And there are other folks, right?
Yes, about 80% of our population has some sort of justice-involved background, or has a family member that they know that is a justice-involved background.
I did not know that statistic. Isn't that interesting? And we all can think, oh, that's. But you know what? That's the thing. Substance use disorder brings on activities in the mind of someone who is not in their right mind at a time. And if you are addicted to a substance or a situation or a thing, you might do things that you might not do. Gotta get her laughing. If you're in your, I'm using air quotes, right mind. There's just activities that people do when they are on substances that wouldn't be what their family taught them, what their community taught them, what their school taught them, what their religion taught them. But when the disease of addiction steps in, sometimes all that logic goes out the window, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So as I said, Alicia and I were at Shakopee prison. Let's talk about the time, March 31st through April 4th. Doing a training to train 22 women to become peer recovery specialists within their community. And I think, and you tell me you agree, tell me what you think, Alicia, we kind of approached this training differently, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
In what way? What did you see different?
I saw it was more based on like the person. Not that we don't treat an individual, as every human individual, as a human being,
Mm-hmm.
but somebody that is incarcerated has a different view on things than somebody out in our community,
Mm-hmm.
or they've gone through different things that some people in our community haven't experienced. And the population that they're in currently has so many different cultures within itself that it is a whole new community in and of itself. And so being more person-centered and asking the individual that is incarcerated what their views are on things, and helping them like focus the training on what they really want to learn, and the focuses and what's most important to them.
Yeah. And I think that's great because we've got individuals that are living within a culture. And then within that culture, there's all kinds of different humans that have different cultures. And then there's the experience of substance use disorder and all the range of recovery that might be going on there. There's going to be individuals coming in that are still withdrawing from chemicals because they have been moved through the system, and this is where they land, and they might be acting sort of silly pants.
Mm-hmm.
And people are going to possibly judge them like, kind of get over it. Come on, get into this. And so what happened in this class is that we really asked the women specifically, what do you need in your world to help the people that are coming in? And the people who are there who might be resistant to recovery because that was a lifestyle, right?
Yep.
They're just living in that. When somebody comes from a particular situation, they are from a neighborhood, from a lifestyle, from a lot of influences. And then they go into this brand new community that is all about following all the rules, doing everything you're supposed to do right. And they're like, I'm not buying this.
Yeah.
And so what we did is we asked the ladies, what would help you? What would be helpful? And we got so much good information about well, this is what we need. This is, we need to know more de-escalation tips. We need to understand.
That's sorry, not to interrupt.
Please interrupt.
That is personally and community related for de-escalation, like how to de-escalate yourself, and then also how to de-escalate being in a situation or a community that they're in with, I hate to say it, newbies coming in, or people that have coming in off substance use issues and things like that maybe aren't regulated yet. So it's de-escalation, like I said, for both the individual and for the community.
Well, and also I think what we also picked up on was sometimes the individuals that run these organizations, run these communities, run the Department of Corrections, they have their own ideas about the individuals who are in there. And so sometimes there can be, I think it's fair to say, a rift between staff and the individuals that are incarcerated. And I know one of the women had kind of a different interaction with one of the staff that's there because she approached it a little different. And so what we try to do is we try to help people, and I'm not just talking about inside the Department of Corrections, talking about all the time, how to help people communicate better.
Absolutely.
Because communication is the key. We're sitting here on the radio communicating with a greater audience. And the idea is that if people learn how to ask questions in a polite and or civil or non-threatening way, they're going to get a different reaction, aren't they?
Yeah. And I think it depends on the population that you're talking to too. Changing your wording to the different populations that you're talking to appeal to their culture, their customs, their, lived experience, things like that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was talking to with one of the individuals, she was she was talking about how she was talking about, so I have and please, all of you, just understand, I'm using language that is somewhat familiar to me, but I'm just going to sort of just pop it out. She's like, her hood talk, kind of like how I would talk in my old neighborhood. And then how would I talk to somebody that I need to get a little bit more respectful to or get a different kind of interaction with. And so we did a little bit of a quick role play. And it was interesting because that's what turned around a conversation she had with one of the staff inside. She kind of just used a different physical visual, like her stature changed, as well as some of the terminology that she used. She goes, it really kind of worked. And I'm like, yeah, this motivational conversation and asking a good question and being complete makes a big difference.
Yeah. And just the education and knowledge on language change.
Yeah.
How it can make a big difference.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what community you're in.
Yeah, when we talk about sobriety versus, saying recovery instead, or we say reuse instead of relapse, and we say justice-involved individual versus a felon or a criminal. And I would not look at any of these women that we were with all week long as criminals or felons. I'd look at them as individuals that are justice impacted. And there's a lot of stories that are behind what brought them to that place. And yes, there were some individuals that have life sentences, and that can be a multitude of different reasons. It doesn't have to be what we instinctively think is a life sentence for. But, some of these women that we were working with are truly reformed humans.
Yes, they are.
And they are individuals that are changing their lives. And we had been to the Shakopee prison prior to that in 2023 and done a training. And we still have 6 individuals that are from that class. Of that 20, did we have? 20 people. So we had 6 of those individuals that were still there. And some of the people that we trained are actually out in the community. A couple of them have gotten certified. Some have gone back to their communities, are probably doing amazing recovery work. But we have these mentors now that are mentoring this new crop of 22. And could they have been any prouder?
No.
I mean,
it was just amazing to see both sides of the fence of the previous people that we've trained and the new ones, how excited both were to help each other and to move on from not just what they look like on paper.
Yeah. And I think that's a very important part, like you said, what people look at on paper. And I think one of the things we try to do is when we're working with individuals that have a justice impact, and that is maybe not initially look at what's on paper, but actually look and see the human. And I will honestly say, and I've said this before when I'm in, when we've talked about this community, and that is, I don't ask what any of these women have done.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because I know why they're there. They're there to help themselves and then help the community in which they are currently living in, and then possibly give them an opportunity to do something really good out in the community. So it's like this 3-tiered kind of thing. And it's just so interesting to watch. One of the women, she came in and she was pretty down, right?
Yeah.
And what was it she said? She said on the last day
that she had been in a depression since she had been there because of not being able to help her family on the outside that is still struggling from substance use. And she was currently in the position that she was in, felt helpless, hopeless, and depressed. And like she had so much time left that she couldn't just get out of bed before, unless she had class, she'd sleep all day. And now she said she has a new purpose and hope on life.
Yeah. I mean, it just both Alicia and I probably that day, we're not tearing up right now, but it was one of those moving moments when you see somebody who came in on a Monday and then we're picking them up on a Friday, or I mean, we're concluding our class on a Friday and we see this energy change. And then by this past Monday, we did a graduation with their certificates and they got to tell their elevator speeches like Alicia did when she introduced herself. And just this like new human showed up. You know, it was just absolutely spectacular. And I think Miss Carol, who is one of the individuals that helps run this program there, what did she say about the individuals? She was saying
she said that she asked you and I if we had to push them to get to do this stuff, to open up, and we had absolutely no resistance on anything. It was just like, I hate to say it this way, but give me all this knowledge, you know, and where she has a little bit pushback and a little bit of resistance because she's staffed there through the DOC versus our Department of Corrections, I should say.
Yes.
For those of you that don't know what DOC means. And so it was just amazing to see. And she said how these ladies have turned themselves around in just a week that we've been working with them, and she can't wait to see moving forward what they can do in the community.
Yeah, it was so funny because Miss Carol came up, she goes, so did you have to push? And I looked at her and I had no idea what she meant. It's like, what do you mean? I didn't have to push them out of their chairs. I didn't have to push them. She's like, no, did you have to push them to learn like you just said? And I'm like, no, I mean, I don't even know what you're saying to me because they were so willing to take it in. I mean, just the energy in the room. And one of the individuals we had name cards in front of everybody. So Caddy could try to remember over the course of a week, everybody's name, which gets a little hard sometimes, not because I don't see them, but I forget who's who sometimes. She had written woohoo on the back of her name card. And that became sort of the I don't know, the emblem of the week. So every time there was something good, she'd like lift her hands up in the air with her name card with the woohoo on the back of it. And we'd all go woohoo. Yeah. And it shows you the energy that took place. So Monday that wasn't there. Tuesday wasn't there, but I think by Wednesday, it was there. It was there. And if that's any indication of how excited individuals are to learn about themselves. This is what we do at Minnesota Recovery Connection. I currently have a class that is overfilled. I've got about 30 people possibly taking the next class. You should have seen Alicia's eyes get big on that one. It's a lot of people, but that's the enthusiasm around doing this work for the recovery community. People want to help people who need either help or just need that extra lift up and opportunity and resources, or are overwhelmed by the barriers that have been put in front of them. And how is it that we can give them the next thing that will help them? And before Alicia and I started this, there's a gentleman who needed some guidance walking through the justice system, because sometimes the Department of Health and Human Services and the justice system don't always see things exactly the way we might. And so there was a bit of a question around that. And so what we do is we try to help people, guide them through, where do you get the answer? What is it that you can do? What is it that you can't do? And when we're working with people who are incarcerated, they have a lot of things they can't do, right?
Yeah.
And I think what happens in the class is that individuals are seen for who they are rather than the number that's on their tag or just by their last name.
Yep.
And
we also, with that, it's a completely non-judgmental space,
Mhm.
but also a space of learning,
Mhm.
and where different cultures within the community, take and learn from one another. And we say oops and ouch, that if somebody says something that maybe offends you, just don't take it personal and just let them know that, hey, this hurt me, or I didn't appreciate the way that it came across, but this is what I've learned, and this is what you can know from my culture and how I approach things.
Yeah. And when we talk about culture, we're not necessarily talking about race. We're not necessarily talking about age. We're not talking about, we're talking about the culture within that community, because there's people who have been there for a shorter time. Those are there for a longer time. Then we have the cultural aspects of where somebody came from in the state. Are they outstate? There's a lot of different factors, just like we have in the greater community.
Mhm.
Everybody comes from a different space. And so the common thing that happened, and I was so impressed, and I don't know if you caught this, there is so much respect in that room,
Yes.
so much respect for one another. We were in a tight training room. It was plenty of space, but chairs a little close here and there, and people would just like get up and get out of the way, or somebody would get somebody a cup of coffee, or somebody would take their lunch tray to the trash for one another. And there was a lot of excuse me's and can I slip through here, or I'm going to dive under the table to get out of the way
Yeah.
because too many people are from side to side. And the perception is that people are kind of rude and unruly in these environments. That's exactly the opposite
Yeah.
of what I saw.
Yep. And it depends too on, like you said before, new people coming in that don't know the culture there or the community, and versus people that have been there a little bit longer, or people that are getting out can mentor somebody that's still going to be in there for a little bit. Especially if they haven't taken the class and want to take the class, they can give them the information and guide them and mentor them to move forward and how to use those resources and become a mentor role in helping somebody and keep that chain going.
Yeah. And I think as we concluded on Monday when we did our graduation, it was really pronounced that this is making an effect in that community. There's just so much more understanding from staff, from individuals, from new people. There's and it goes to show that once you start to implement a way of communicating with one another, that things can change. Things can turn around. They have what's called an all recovery meeting. And that all recovery meeting is not like an AA meeting, but it's a meeting set up and where individuals talk about, what do they talk about?
Mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being good, 0 being maybe not the greatest. I wouldn't say down and out completely, but some people just sit at a 0 just because they haven't experienced anything else. And so they do that. We do check-ins. Those meetings are actually on Friday evenings at 5 or anywhere from 5 to 7 on Fridays at the Shakopee prison. And then also I noticed when I was at the transitions fair, Willow River CIP group yesterday that
CIP group is? Yeah, she's searching for the acronym description. She's searching. I see the wheel turning above her head.
It's incarcerated persons, but I can't forget.
Can't remember what.
Okay,
so incarcerated persons. We'll go with that.
Yes. And so they were all looking for an all recovery meeting because they have a lot of AA and NA meetings brought in there, but they're looking for something that is more community based, inclusive.
Yeah.
And so they were looking for that, and so they were excited and willing to get out to our community because they don't have an all recovery meeting at Willow River versus like Shakopee does on Fridays in the evenings. So.
Yeah. And many of the other places where we've trained have all recovery meetings, or they're getting their stuff together to get them. But
yes.
What I think, the value of what you just said is that the word is getting out there. And that's the important part. I mean, this is a large grant that we got from the Department of Corrections, working with Minnesota Recovery Connection and several other recovery community organizations in the state of Minnesota to support this community. And as Alicia said, 80% of people who have encountered substance use disorder and addiction have maybe some sort of justice involvement. It could be a DWI or it could be much more serious. So the scale in there is is
I
insurmountable.
mean, it can go as low as down to a traffic ticket.
Yeah.
That's still justice
Impacted. Yeah, exactly. So what we're finding is that the people who are getting made aware of this way of communicating with individuals and trained, but it's not so much the training, it's the how they evolve in the class.
And planting the seed inside their soul.
Yeah. And that you if we give you an opportunity to learn and to feel more about who you are and who you can become, not forgetting who you were, but looking forward rather than looking at what a piece of paper says, like you said,
Yeah.
Alicia. What can we put on that new piece of paper? Well, many of these individuals that are in this class, because we will say 80 people, 85 people from a population of how many?
I don't
think
know
it's
what
like 700 or 800.
but it was 15% of the population applied and only 22 got in the class.
Because we have to limit it. We can only have so many people. But a couple of the things that I take away from that is, number one, the individuals that got trained can be mentors for those who did not get in the class. But then that's how much they're hearing about this. 15% of an entire group of, they're like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? What is this? Why is it? Why do I keep hearing about these peer recovery specialists, these certified peer recovery specialists? And what it means is that there's some good talk going on. It's not
change talk.
Change talk. She's just being a little trainer there. She's being a little teacher there for the Cadster. Some change talk is going on around, hey, you don't have to live in your addiction. You can live in some place called recovery.
Yes.
And what does that look like to you? And that's the question that we ask. Literally, that's the question that we ask. Hey, what does your recovery look like to you? Because a lot of people think it should be treatment and it should be this and it should be AA meetings and it should be NA meetings and it should be you do this and you should do that. Well, what we do is we say
could.
And then what did you say when we started the program about we look at people from not what is wrong with them but
what's happened to them?
Because many times we can look at a person and say, oh, what's wrong with you today? What's going on? Geez, what's the, and then Alicia can come out and say, hey, you know what?
What happened to you?
What's going on with you?
Or what's going on, or what has happened to you in your past that maybe has influenced to where you are or where you have gotten to today.
Yeah. So what we try to do is we try to open up the conversation and not focus on the negative. That's why we open up the show with what's right with you today. And admittedly, Alicia and I are pretty darn pooped out right now.
Yeah.
But what we've been doing is we've been both giving back to the recovery community in many different ways.
And that not only helps the recovery community, but helps me myself.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I was completely enthusiastic about going to this dinner last night to see an entire new group that is helping solve the situation, helping bring to light that substance use disorder, particularly in the East African Somali community and all the other variables within that, is a community and a culture that used to close their doors on all of this. Well, now the doors are getting open and we got a wedge in there. We haven't whipped that door wide open yet. But what we've done is we've had the ability in working with Nia and having Fakhia Badul do her amazing work with her team, crack open the conversations. We had a mother there who is an East African mother. She's called the mother or the mom. And she was just saying, we can't have any more children die and say they've died of, and I'm using air quotes, heart attacks or died in their sleep. No, they died of substance use disorder. They died of an overdose. And we need to call it out because it is what it is.
Yeah.
And we can't have young people die when there is hope and opportunity. And so that's literally what we're bringing to this other community in the justice impacted groups.
Mm-hmm.
Giving people hope and realizing that they don't have to live in that space of shame and guilt and fear. They will have their own personal regrets and, maybe try to understand what the circumstances were that brought them to the decisions and or the circumstances that brought them to incarceration.
But they don't have to be defined by their past, and they can move forward from that and learn from it and give knowledge and hope to others that maybe have a future on the other side of the fence.
Yeah. And, we hope that many of these women and men particularly do bring this knowledge out to the greater community, because they've invested the time, and we want them to invest the time in other people, even, as we always say, just one person, because one person impacts many, many humans.
And that just brings me.
So before you say whatever marvelous thing you were going to say, I am going to let everybody know that we're going to take another break. Thank you for listening to Redefining Recovery, a Recovery Revolution, here with Alicia and Caddy from Minnesota Recovery Connection. So we will catch you on the flip side and conclude our conversation.
This guitar needs 6 strings, 'cause without it there's no song. And this house needs love in it, 'cause without it there's no home. And there's one thing.
Oh, he mutes himself. Oh, I just love that music. It just kind of sways. I think I say that every time. I just got to sway in my chair. Oh, beautiful voices, beautiful sort of bringing us back. Again, this is Redefining Recovery, a Recovery Revolution with Caddy and
Alicia.
I think the Mountain Dew is hitting her right about now. So Alicia was going to say something about her experience up at what we call a transitions fair, which is we as Minnesota Recovery Connection will go into spaces and places and inform people who have a justice involvement, who are currently incarcerated, and we will set up a table and we will go in and say, hey, here's who we are. So tell us what happened.
So we had a previous volunteer that was at Minnesota Recovery Connection volunteering for us. And he is now back at Willow River, the CIP program, which
correctional facility,
yes.
Because he did have, we'll call his reuse of his
Yes.
background. So
Yes.
he was out. Then he came to Minnesota Recovery Connection, kind of got a fresh look at things, and then life maybe went sideways a little bit.
Yeah.
So he was back incarcerated.
Yep.
And
he was an advocate for us at the Transitions Fair of standing by our table and just wheeling everybody in, saying we have something different than a lot of other people can offer. Not that their resources weren't, just as good, but a lot of people have been open to the all recovery meetings like Caddy and I had previously talked about. But he was advocating and saying what he wanted to do differently, or what the change was that he's seen in himself, that to land him back in there to take, and also use that knowledge to move forward to take, and what he's not going to do when he gets out.
right,
Because he will be getting out in May 6th.
the May 6th.
So like 3 weeks away.
Oh, that's so great. So we have to remember that when there's a lifestyle like burned into somebody's lived experience, sometimes breaking away is very hard. So this individual was incarcerated, came to Minnesota Recovery Connection, because obviously Alicia might have dropped some incredible information on him. And he's like, oh, okay, this is a cool place to hang out. And then life happened again.
Yeah.
You know?
And he really congratulated us on being a safe space to go, being a safe space just to have somebody to listen to. And he was advocating that big time at the Transitions Fair for our table. And I think I had the most signups that out of all the resources
Not
that were there.
she's bragging.
No,
at
I am
all.
bragging.
Yes, she is. And you should.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it goes to show, number one, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I give a lot of credit to Alicia, because she knows what she's talking about, because she has lived experience within this. This is her dream world, to work with this community. So how many people do you know that say that in the world, right?
Yeah, not very many.
And she wants to work at this community because, and I think I can say this with and I have the similar feeling, but not as impacted as Alicia does. When we leave the correctional facility at Shakopee, Alicia many times will be having a sort of a down moment, because we hate to leave those individuals behind. We have to, because they are part of that system, but we see an entirely different human in our class. And we know that we get to walk outside those gates and doors and
go sleep in our own bed, go back to our families, and they are, ultimately in that position they're in for a certain amount of time, or possibly a little bit longer.
Yeah. And there's an element of breaking our hearts, as well as going, okay, the justice system is just that, but how can we, person-centered, change how people move forward. And that's what we're always talking about. So this whole conversation has been about that experience of working with 22 women and some incredible staff that were super supportive to us. But seeing these individuals just like change over the course of a week, see themselves different, see one another different, have a respect for one another that was possibly there, but some of these people didn't really encounter one another.
No, they didn't.
They,
because they are a different part of different cultures within the facilities.
Yeah. And so it's not all just one big pool of individuals. There's a lot of separation, and that's for safety and security and all that stuff. So we had a lot of people come in who might not have known one another, but by the end of the week, there was a lot of friendships made there.
Yes. Connections.
And
because
connections.
the opposite of addiction is
connection. Oh, let's say that one more time.
The opposite of addiction is connection.
So we'll just burn that into your brain, everybody. But that's the whole idea around how Minnesota Recovery Connection and this peer-to-peer support came around is how much better is it for someone who has had a lived experience to share that lived experience with somebody else. And Alicia has a bit more investment in the system of the Department of Justice Impacted. We call Caddy the Kitten Club.
Yes.
I had my experience, and it was very fruitful because I never turned back. And Alicia, I would say probably 100% is not going to turn around and do anything that might put her back in that situation. But the compassion, ladies and gentlemen, and people in between that this woman has for this community is abundant.
Yes, they asked me not to say a goodbye speech at the end when we did our graduation because they didn't want to tear up and I didn't want to tear up.
Yes, because there were several situations where the emotion sort of took over the room on occasion.
Because of shared lived experience and somebody to relate on them on a same lived experience level.
As well as just kind of being okay with everybody just being together. I mean, there's that element of, can we all just hang out and can we just have good conversation in a non-judgmental way, bring up difficult conversations. When we talked about the culture that goes on within the Department of Corrections and then the culture that's outside in the greater community, we had some emotions flying around. Because it's everywhere, you know, the different ways that we've moved through this life that we all have. So we always want to help people who are not struggling with substance use disorder understand that there is no one picture of a human. There's never one picture. There's never, well, if you're an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic. If you're a drug addict, you're a drug addict. No. What happened before, after, during, what went sideways, what went well, you know, what is it that we need to talk more about? And that brings us, you know, this whole conversation to the beauty of just having an invested conversation. And what do we do the best of?
Listen. Reflective listening.
Yes. Yeah. And reflective listening, when we mean that, it's like, so I think what I heard you say, and you know what? Wow, that was really impactful. Thank you for sharing. Not here's what I think you should do. Here's what I think I would do. Nah. And please, for all those listening, never say, I think I know what you're going through. Or I've had that happen too. Because no experience is ever the same.
No, you could go through the same experience and one be a big trauma to one person and one being a little trauma to another person. Or just because they are each human beings on an individual level, that doesn't mean their experience is the same.
And we have to point that out quite a bit because, you know, when you feel like you're a person that struggled with substance use disorder, we have like a connection just right out of the gate, right?
Yep.
And then, but we have to say, and tell me a little bit about you. Tell me a little bit about what's going on with you. And
I've learned also to just say, I'm here for you. I hear what you're saying. Not, I understand what you're going through.
Oh, it's such a different message. Such a different message. So I hope this was an interesting conversation for people to listen to. And if things happen to people and they end up in an incarcerated situation, let's just be careful not to judge them based on maybe what might be on paper or might be in the paper or on the TV. Let's have some compassion about maybe what was behind all of that. Doesn't mean that what somebody did should not be held to account. We are not saying that at all, but there's usually a story. There's usually a story. And then sometimes there are people that just maybe not just be the best humans on the planet. So then they reside in those places, and that's okay too.
Yep.
But maybe what we can bring to them is we could bring them just a little bit of self-compassion, potentially.
Yeah, because not only if you treat them as a human being, but they're going to learn to treat others as human beings.
Yep. And sometimes people have been treated very poorly in this life,
Yes.
this world that we live in. So I want to thank you, Alicia Doty, for being here. I want to thank all of the listening audience, and just remember that you can hear this radio broadcast, something like that, on any of your listening devices. Thank you for supporting our mission at Minnesota Recovery Connection. And if you want to, we're always going to ask for donations. We are just a nonprofit, little beautiful organization. But if you want to engage with us with volunteering, minnesotarecovery.org. Thank you for listening to Redefining Recovery, a Recovery Revolution here on AM 950. Goodbye, Alicia.
Goodbye, Caddy.
Have a good day, everyone.